The first time I put the message out on YouTube that this product could sell, it started selling immediately. Now, again, it's $4.99 a pop. So it's not like I retired off of this, but
Sure.
I made sales. And when I made that first sale, all the way, here's what I said to myself. I said, I just took an idea from nothing, turned it into something tangible, put a price tag on it, and exchanged it for money. I could do this for the rest of my life. I'm not going to be playing basketball forever. And hopefully the phone rings again. But even if it does, I can't play forever. Right? You can't jump 40 inches in the air forever. But this thing that I just done, which I now know to be called intellectual property, didn't know that term back then. I just took an idea out of my head and turned it into money. Like, I could do this. I got a bunch of ideas. If I could sell these two, I could sell 200 more.
Yep.
And that's what I started doing. And this was first as it started with basketball. Then self-publishing became a thing around the same time. Wow. So I started writing books. Then I found out, well, if I can make a basketball program, I can make a mindset program. So I started creating courses. So in this 2-year period, that's when I really started to become an entrepreneur and really.
The Audacious Living Podcast, where our ongoing goal is to help our listeners live their best audacious lives ever. Thank you so much for joining us here on the podcast and taking time out of your busy day. Now, self-improvement is like forging the sharpest sword in the fire of challenges and tough decisions. Just as a sword is refined through heat and pressure, we too can become stronger and better versions of ourselves by continuously facing and overcoming obstacles. Dre Baldwin is a former professional basketball player turned entrepreneur, author, and speaker, and he's here with us to share his insights on discipline, confidence, mental toughness, and personal initiative. Big fan of what the work Dre does, and I love the way he's pivoted from sports into this new direction. His journey as a Division III basketball player, to the successful entrepreneur, highlights the importance of discipline and perseverance in achieving one's goals, and he's pivoted oh so nicely, and I am certain that our listeners are going to appreciate what Dre's got to say. So without any further ado, here's our conversation. Hey, Dre, thank you for joining me here today on the Audacious Living Podcast. I appreciate you making the time like this, my friend.
Audley, I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, I know it's great to have you here. On this podcast, we spend so much time encouraging individuals to live that best audacious life that we talk about often, and the steps and the things that they can do individually themselves to get there. One of the things that is a sort of reoccurring theme of message is that the path that we all take is our own. So, Dre, what you've done to get to where you need to be is going to be very different from myself and others, but it's still a walk or a path that we have to take. And it starts with that very first step. So maybe as a starting point, we can get you to sort of talk about the work that you do and work on your game. Is you're the CEO of a company, former basketball player as well, which you got my attention being a basketball guy myself. I'd love to hear about your work and what you're up to.
Sure. So I'll give you the 2 to 3 minute version. I come from the city of Philadelphia, PA, now based in Miami, Florida. Was always into sports, got around to basketball by about age 14, which is pretty late if you want to go somewhere in the sport, such as college or pro. Only played 1 year high school ball due to that, because I was got a late start, late bloomer. Sat on the bench the 1 year I played in high school, walked on to play college ball at the Division III level, which is the third tier of sports for people who don't know the sports world. I got out of college and wanted to keep playing, but nobody was really checking for me because I'd only played at the Division III level. So Division I is the guys you see on TV. Division III is down in the basement. Nobody knows about us. So I had to hustle my way into pro basketball. I had to go to this event called an exposure camp, which is basically like an open job fair for athletes who are not signed to a team. So it's not like teams were calling me out of college. I had to go call them. Played my way through that exposure camp to actually get my shot, and went on to play pro basketball 9 years overseas, starting in Lithuania in 2005, to give everybody a timeline. And at that same time, I started putting videos on this new website that said you could put up as much as you want, as much footage as you want for free. It was called youtube.com. And that's where I started to build a brand online. So I was doing both at the same time, because as an athlete, you get a lot of free time. A long day at work is not very long when you're an athlete. So after a couple of years of publishing these videos on YouTube, the players started asking questions about my approach, because they saw that I was really consistent with the publishing. And this is long before it was cool to be consistently putting content online. There was no such thing as a content strategy at this time. So they would just ask stuff about, why you come to the gym every day, or how do you get the confidence to perform in the game, or you got cut from your high school team 3 years in a row, you walked on to play in college. how'd you keep the vision alive? You could even become a pro athlete, because it's kind of a far fetched idea given my background that I could
Right.
even make it as a pro. And,
Right.
or they would ask, how do you get started? How do you get started playing overseas if you want to? Or how do you get started getting known on the internet if you want to? Because by this point, being known on the internet was starting to become a career aspiration for people. This is about 2010. By this time, I started getting these questions. So I started answering those questions in my content. And that's when I started to build what became the framework of what I do now, which is called Work on Your Game. And I started talking about these pieces like discipline, confidence, mental toughness, personal initiative. It was really drawn from my sports experience, and I was
Right.
giving it to the athletes. But what happened, oddly, was people who didn't play sports started catching those videos, the ones where I was talking, not the basketball ones, but the talking videos. And they said, well, Dre, this stuff applies to me too, and I don't even play basketball. So
Right.
that's how I knew that I had an audience, a potential audience outside of the sports space. And I had always known that I wanted to do something outside of sports after I was done playing sports.
Right. Right.
So I kept playing ball till 2015, and I'm skipping over some stuff, but I'm sure we'll get to it. I kept playing ball till 2015, and by that point, I already had an audience of ball players, and I had non-ball players who wanted the mindset stuff. So
Yeah.
when I stopped playing, I started really talking about the mindset stuff, got into professional speaking, writing books, coaching, things like that. And that's pretty much what I've been doing full time ever since. So that's how we got here.
Dre, you were a pioneer before there were pioneers, man. We talk about doing that work in the YouTube space. Again, now everyone's doing it, right? But there was a
Right.
time where that didn't happen. What was sort of the motivator? Because you didn't have a blueprint, right? Like you didn't have. It was like you saw someone doing it. Like what was? Well, yeah,
Right.
how'd that happen?
Great question. So going back to that exposure camp I went to try to get myself into pro basketball, I played well at that event. It's only a 2-day event. And mind you, there's 200 guys there who all think they can play pro ball, but none of us are at that point. We don't have a contract.
Right.
That's why we're there. I played pretty well. And when you go to those events, you get two things. You get a scouting report written by a verified third party who basically will say, hey, confirm, hey, this guy's good enough to play pro.
Right.
And then you get the footage from the games that you're playing, because you play 2 games each day, 2 on Saturday, 2 on Sunday.
Right.
So the footage was on this thing called a VHS tape. You remember those?
I do very well.
Yeah, so the VHS tape, I took that to an audio visual store, got them to put it on a data CD, and that data CD footage was what I put on YouTube.
Gotcha.
And the reason I put it on YouTube is not because I was trying to get known on the internet, because again, in 2005, who cares about getting known on the internet? Nobody.
No.
I put it on YouTube because the VHS tape is, for those Gen Zers listening to this, a VHS tape is like YouTube, but the physical version. So if you lose it, it's not like you can go on somebody else's phone and get it. It's gone.
Right.
So
God.
I needed it someplace where I knew the footage would not disappear. So I was betting that the internet / YouTube would not go away. So luckily that was a good bet. So that's why I put the footage up. But then random people found the video, and they just would comment on the video. They're like, yo, who are you? Where do you play? What schools you go to? How often do you practice? And that's when I realized, oh, these players just want to learn basketball. They weren't looking for me. They was looking for basketball, period. And I just happened to be on there. So I said, okay, I go to the gym every day and work out anyway. So what I did, Aubrey, was I took this little cheap $100 camera I had at the time, because this is before we had video cameras on our phones.
Yep.
Right. And I would take the camera with me to the gym every day, because I worked out every day anyway, but nobody was watching my workouts.
Right.
I just took the camera and I set it up right on the bench next to the court. I didn't even have a tripod, right? So I just put the camera next to the court and I just let it record while I was working out. And then I would just take that footage, put it on my computer, and then I just grabbed anything that looked interesting and I would put it on YouTube. And this was sporadic. It's not like I started doing this every day the first day. It would be like once a month. Every 6 weeks, I would just put a video up there, and if people liked it, then I'd make another one. But again, there was no benefit from doing it at that point. It wasn't until about 2009 when Google purchased YouTube. Then I heard it was a girl that was doing makeup, and she was like the first YouTube star.
Right.
And she was making money from putting up videos, because Google they made the partner program where now they put the ads on the video, and now you can get money off the ads. So then somebody sent me that article and said, well, this girl's making makeup videos and she makes money the more her videos get viewed. Well, Dre, don't you make basketball videos? Why don't you just put more up and maybe you'll make some money? And I said, oh, well, hey, if it works, let me try it. And that's how I started. That's when I started doing it like on purpose. And that was, again, that was about 4 or 5 years later. That's why I started doing it.
I love it, and I love sort of the organic, natural process that you went through, right? But I think for me, the piece that really stands out is you did it to meet a need. So you had people coming to you saying, hey, and you're like, well, okay, how can I meet that need? How can I help that individual? What value can I bring to answer this problem or question or whatever? And so I think it's just a beautiful way of getting anything started. It really, really is.
That's right. It was just scratching the itch. So as I just saw what people were asking for, they would just say, "Hey, can you make a video on dribbling? Can you make one on shooting? Can you make a
Yep.
video about how to dunk?" And I would just make videos about those things. And as more and more people started watching, I started thinking like maybe this might be a thing. But again, it wasn't until Google monetized it that I said, "Okay, here's the actual ROI from doing this stuff." Because again, who cares about being known on the internet? You were like a bum living in the basement if you were
That's
spending
right.
all your time on the internet in 2008. So,
That's right. Who's a loser in the basement making videos, right? That's what it was
right,
almost.
exactly. Bloggers and all that. Yeah, that was looked down upon at one time.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So you start to make the transition into answering questions
Mm-hmm.
or providing a different type of value, that off-court value, right? Was there a process around that, or you just simply just answering questions?
Oh no, there was a process to that. So about that 2000, so a very pivotal time for me, Audrey, was between 2009 and 2011. So it was about a 2 year span. So what happened was I was playing pro basketball. I played in about 4 or 5 countries at that point, but I was home in Miami in the USA, and the phone was not ringing. So
Gotcha.
anybody knows anything about the sports world, you got the LeBrons who get the 5 year contracts, and then you got people like me. And our contracts, when you play overseas, most of the time is year by year.
Right.
So when one contract ends, you got to get the next contract. And at that point, the next contract had not come. So I'm home and the phone's not ringing. But as an athlete, you got to keep working out and stay ready just in case the phone rings. If the phone rings, you got to go like 2 days later, you got to be on a plane and ready to play. Phone's not ringing. And I'm asking myself, at this point, I'm in my mid to late 20s. And I'm like, well, I don't have control over my money. I don't control it because if the phone doesn't ring, I make no money. Right. And my best skill is this ability to play basketball. I need a way to remove this from being my only access to money through basketball. So I asked myself a really important question. How can I combine 3 things? Basketball, the internet, and money making. How can I do all 3 at the same time and have control over it? Right. And this is a very important question. And I tell people this all the time, is that the most important thing most of us need whenever we find ourselves stuck is not more answers, but better questions. Because if you get answers, you're only answering the questions that you're asking, but you're stuck. So the questions you're asking obviously ain't the right questions. Right? You need to get better questions. So when I asked myself a better question, that's when I said, okay, well, Dre, look, you got this audience of people on the internet, which doesn't really equate to anything, but it's something. And at this point, I've been blogging on my Facebook page because I would blog and like with my friends from college because I was traveling overseas. So to them, I'm like living this movie lifestyle because I'm traveling, playing basketball. So I've always been a writer. I was writing before I was even on YouTube, but my blog never blew up like YouTube. So I said, I got this audience of people online. I'm writing articles, and it looks like more and more people are starting to consume on the internet. So there's something here. Yeah. And I remember telling a friend of mine in 2009, like, whatever this is I'm doing on the internet, this is going to be bigger than what I'm doing in basketball. I could see it because I could see it coming. I could see it growing. But I didn't know how to do it. Right. So at the time, I just
finished. Because it's never been done. Right. That's the part we're talking about. Like, it's like you're digital before digital existed. Right. And now you're laying a blueprint.
Right. So there were people doing it, but it wasn't like widespread to where it was easy to.
Right.
So at the time, I just finished reading Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Work Week.
Okay.
And he had a blog. Tim's blog is what made his book sell. A lot of people don't even know that. But the blog, I would always read that. And on his blog, he said, here's how you can test out a digital product and possibly sell it online. I said, well, that's what I need. Let me see. So I went and followed his little experiment, and I created 2 products. It was one for dribbling the basketball, one for shooting the basketball, because my audience was basketball players.
Yep.
And I priced them at $4.99 a piece. Okay. And I put them out, and I followed Tim's experiment. And the first time I put the message out on YouTube that this product could sell, it started selling immediately. Now, again, it's $4.99 a pop. So it's not like I retired off of this, but I made sales. And when I made that first sale, all the way, here's what I said to myself. I said, I just took an idea from nothing, turned it into something tangible, put a price tag on it, and exchanged it for money. I could do this for the rest of my life. I'm not going to be playing basketball forever. And hopefully the phone rings again. But even if it does, I can't play forever. Right? You can't jump 40 inches in the air forever. But this thing that I just done, which I now know to be called intellectual property, didn't know that term back then. I just took an idea out of my head and turned it into money. Like, I could do this. I got a bunch of ideas. If I could sell these 2, I could sell 200 more. And that's what I started doing. And this was first as it started with basketball. Then self-publishing became a thing around the same time. So I started writing books. Then I found out, well, if I can make a basketball program, I can make a mindset program. So I started creating courses. So in this 2-year period, that's when I really started to become an entrepreneur and really
Mm,
part of this brand called Work on Your Game. I started to make it into a real thing because now I had control over the destiny of where I was going. And it didn't matter if I played basketball again or not. Now,
right.
luckily, the phone rang again. So from
Sure.
2010 to 2015, I kept playing. But at this point, now what I was doing on the internet mattered more than what I was doing on the court, honestly,
Mm,
because I knew that this was my retirement. Like, what am I going to do after basketball? I could do this forever.
right.
So that's really what I started focusing on. And even to this day, if I'm at the mall and somebody recognizes me, it's not because they know I played overseas in Slovakia. They don't know anything about that. All right. They know me from YouTube. Right. So that's how I got into this space.
It's so congratulations on sort of finding your
Yeah,
your
thank
your
you.
purpose, because that's big. I mean, oftentimes people will go through life and not come to that realization. And again, that's early off the top. I was saying we get there at different points and different periods, and your path is yours and mine is mine. Um, it's worth acknowledging the fact that you found yours and you're doing it in such a profound and innovative way, particularly in a new space, which was really awesome. Um,
Thank you.
I wonder. I want to get into work in the game, but what I actually want to go back to, because you talked earlier about being home and having to be ready
Mhm.
when you don't know when the phone calls ring, right?
Yep.
That is a really, like, preparation is a really key when we talk about mindset, because you don't know when an opportunity is going to come, but you always have to be ready when it does come, because you're not going to have a long window to decide whether this is good enough for me. Should I? Should I? You just got to go. I was wondering if you could sort of talk about, I guess, the importance of being prepared.
Preparation is the hallmark of the professional. So I'm really glad you asked that question because that's something that I actually just this morning on my Instagram story, I said this first thing I said in the morning when I was walking to the gym this morning is that when you're a professional of what you do, it is expected that you are always prepared for the job before the job happens. So if you're a professional speaker, you can't get on the stage and just figure out the speech. If you're a professional athlete, you don't get to the game and then figure out what plays you're going to run. You know all that stuff ahead of time. You
Right.
do the work up front. So every professional, if you're a plumber and somebody calls you at 2 in the morning because their toilet's leaking, you can't get there and be looking through the manual trying to figure out what to do. You got to know that that's the expectation of you as a professional. So for me, I always just understood that. I probably heard somebody say it or something, but it's always been something inside of me that you have to be ready beforehand for when the situation calls. So when the situation calls and that phone rings, especially when you're playing overseas specifically, that the phone ring or any sport, and you're a free agent, when the phone rings, they expect you to be, can you be here tomorrow? Like,
Right.
can you be on the court and ready to play tomorrow? Like literally tomorrow. So it's not like, yeah, give me a week to get in shape. No, it's tomorrow. And if you get there tomorrow and you're not in shape, they will send you right back home. And I've seen it happen.
Yes.
So that preparation, that kind of trial by fire that you got to go through when you're a pro athlete. Luckily, it never happened to me, but I saw it happen to people. So
Sure.
I know that's the way that the game went. So I just said, why not just stay in shape all the time? So I never had to get in shape and still
Mhm.
stay in shape to this day, even though I don't play anymore.
Right. No,
Yeah,
and I think that's really the difference between those that are successful and those that aren't, right? The ones that are always ready prepared. And the thing about it, when you're always prepared and you're ready to go for that call that comes at a moment's notice, you obviously you'll I believe you'll perform better. But even in your performance almost looks effortless. We talk about people make things look easy, right?
that's right.
We focus on the end result, how they make it look, but we're not there in the 2 a.m.s when the practice is happening, or maybe they missed a 500 jump shots while they were trying to get that perfect shot. Like, there's all sorts of things that happen we don't see because we spend so much on what we have in front of us.
That's right. And as a professional, that's the other expectation is that the job is not easy, but you make it look easy.
Right.
They expect you to make
Right.
it look easy. And I remember I was playing in Germany, for example. I'd tell you the story. And I was with this agent because at the time I was a free agent. I was with a team, then I wasn't on that team anymore, but I stayed in the country. And I connected with an agent. And he said, all right, you look like I could tell that he could see I look like a player who he could get on a team. And if I
Yes.
get signed, he makes money. So he said, all right,
Yep.
I'll bring you around to some teams and let's see if we can get you signed. So he brings me to one team to practice. And I practice with this team and I'm playing against all their German players. And I'm doing pretty good. I remember we did this drill where it's like 5 times on defense, 5 times on offense. And all 5 times on offense, I scored. And all 5 times on defense, I stopped the other guy. So
Right.
I'm feeling good. I'm like, yeah, I'm doing my thing. I'm impressing this guy. We get to dinner that night with the agent. He's like, man, what you did tonight was not impressive. And I'm looking at him like, what are you talking about? And he said, well, you're an American, Dre. Yeah, you were scoring, but it looked like you were trying too hard to score. Like when you're an American, you got to make it look easy. And I said, oh, okay. And that's what he told me. He said, that's what it is. That's how they judge you. They judge you by, you got to make it look easy. You can't look like you're trying too hard to do so. And, you know, you just got to, this is what they do. This is the expectation that's on you in this space. If you want to play in this game, this is the way it works. I said, all right, cool, no problem. And then we had a game. He put me in the game a couple of days later. I just shot the ball every time, scored all these points. And he was all impressive. Like, man, that was a great game. I was okay. And that's the way it works. That's the way it works. So as a professional, people expect you to make things look easy. And if it looks like you're trying too hard, then sometimes people are just not impressed. And that's just how it is.
Right.
Not right or wrong, just what it is.
Well, and it's interesting the mindset overseas, particularly when it comes to, well, I mean, they would call you as an American a foreign player,
Right.
but this is really interesting because certain expectations that they have. So in your case, in that example, you know, as an American, this is how you should play, and maybe it's because they see what what's online and the LeBron James and the their images of what
Right.
Americans are. So when you
Right.
come in, that's what they're looking for you to be.
That's right.
Is Well, how long did it take you to sort of figure that part out? Like, I'm here in Germany, and now that I'm here as an American, this is what I should be doing. Was that transition difficult, and how long did it take for you to figure out?
Oh, you better know that before you get there. Because if you don't do it, they'll send you back home. That's how long it takes to figure out. You need to know before you go. So I knew people who had played overseas, and I knew people who had played overseas. And at the time, when I first started playing, there was like one website that was talking about overseas ball. There would be like a message board, and people were talking about this stuff. Like, you got to go over there, and even the exposure camp that I went to, the coaches, the trainers at that camp talked about that there's an expectation when you're an American, a foreign player over there, the investment for the team to bring you there is more than the investment for the local guys, because the local guys just got to get on the train and drive there. They got to fly you over. They got to put you in an apartment. It costs more money to pay you. And sometimes they had to pay import fees because they're bringing in foreign goods, so to speak, into the country. So all of this stuff costs more money. So they're expecting you to make them their money back with your performance. So you're supposed to be better than everybody else. So you know that before you get there. And if you don't, you find out pretty quick.
That's right. That's right. No, yeah, because they will send you home. And there's also too, there's a limit as how much oftentimes American players that they bring in, like when they talk about bringing foreign players. So you have to be that cream of the crop. Like the expectation is you have to be there. Hence, it's so important why we're going to segue into why it's so important for you to work on your game. Talk about sort of what that work on your game movement is all about.
Yeah, well, starting in about that 2009 period, I just come home actually from Germany, and I was in a 24-hour fitness gym. And at this time, I had a nice little buzz to my name from all the YouTube videos and all these basketball players following me. And they would always leave comments just asking for help, tips, advice on the game. And I was in this 24-hour fitness. Is about 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. And I had my little cheap $100 camera with me, same one. And I always kept it with me because at this point now I'm making videos on purpose. And I remember finishing the workout, and I'm just stretching after my workout, and I just had something on my mind. So I started recording. This video is still on YouTube to this day. And I said in the camera, a lot of you players always asking me for help, but I'm going to explain to you the difference between me and you. The reason why you can't play and you're not making your high school team and you go play at the playground, nobody wants to pass you the ball, is because look at where each of us is at right now. I'm in the gym working out. You're on YouTube watching YouTube. So what you need to do is get off YouTube, stop playing Xbox, stop standing on the corner outside, and go work on your game. And I was just talking. I wasn't trying to make that a phrase. I was just saying it. It's the first time I ever used that phrase. And when I said it, a lot of people just picked up on that phrase and they said, work on your game, Joey. That's perfect. Like you just basically encapsulated exactly what everything you're doing, everything is about. Work on your game. People just started repeating it back to me. Right. And it took me about a year or two to realize it. But I said, I need to brand everything I'm doing off that. Because at the time, it didn't have a name. I mean, I had Dre all day. I called myself Dre all day. But work on your game. Once I realized it, I said, everything is work on your game. And that's what it's been ever since.
Yep, and it sends a very strong message right off the bat, and it's clear to people. So that's important having that when you talk about branding, how important that is. So work on your game. There's sort of 3 pillars or 3 principles, if you will. There's discipline, self-confidence, mental toughness, and then personal initiative. So maybe you can sort of talk about how they so each of them individually, but then how they correlate together to come together and make someone successful.
Absolutely. So discipline is definitely number one. Whenever people ask me, Ollie, what's the number one asset or attribute that's helped you personally, outside of business, basketball, anything. This, for me personally, number one is discipline. And it's definitely number one thing that will separate you from everybody else. In my background as an athlete, I dealt with a lot of athletes who were more talented than me, but they didn't have the discipline that I had. And there are some athletes who had enough talent compared to me that if they had my discipline, you'd be watching them on TV to this very day. Now, I had a little bit less talent, but enough to be over the baseline to become a pro. But the discipline is the reason why I became a pro athlete, and is the reason why I'm still doing what I do now. It's not necessary. It's not talent. It's not that I'm that much more talented than everybody else. So the discipline is just showing up every single day to do the work, which is, if you're going to be a professional, definition of a professional is a person who does something as their main paid occupation. And the only way you can get paid to do something consistently is if you deliver consistently. And to deliver consistently, you must show up and deliver even when you don't feel like delivering. And we have a whole concept called the third day that's all about that. How do you show up on the days that you don't feel like showing up? Because when you're an athlete, there are days you don't feel like practicing. Right? There are days LeBron does not feel like playing in the game, but you can't tell from watching him that he don't feel like playing in the game because his performance is consistent. Same thing with Michael Jordan, Tiger Woods, Serena Williams, that there are days they don't feel like it, but they show up and they deliver every time. That's why they're pros. So the second principle is confidence. And confidence is usually the number one thing most people are asking about. Like, Dre, how do I get more confident in my business, more confident in playing my sport, more confident in putting myself out there, all those things. And what a lot of people don't understand, even people fail with confidence because they don't know where it comes from.
Yes.
Confidence is a result of discipline. Confidence is a byproduct of discipline. The more disciplined you are, the more confident you afford yourself to be. So anybody you know who is extremely confident, usually they're very disciplined in the same thing in which they're confident. And that's why they're confident, because confidence is defined as your belief in your ability to do something. So where do you get belief from? You get belief from actually doing it. And what's doing it is practice, is the consistency, is doing it every day, even when you don't feel like doing it. That's the discipline. So discipline creates confidence. And when you're confident, you go out there and perform. When you perform, you get results. You produce results, you get rewards. So that's where the second piece is the confidence. Now, the third piece is the mental toughness. And the mental toughness could encompass all of this, because mental toughness is about how much can you remain disciplined and confident even when things are not working in your favor, even when things aren't working the way you want them to work. So it's like, if I was to write down for somebody, okay, go do these 10 things every day for the next month, and you're going to be successful, and they go do them, but they're still not successful. Will you keep doing it? We do it for another month and another month and another month. So mental toughness is about your willingness to persevere, to be consistent, to be resilient, just to keep going, even when things are not working the way you expected them to work. When success decides that it's not going to be on your schedule, it's going to be on its own schedule, will you keep showing up? And that mental toughness is kind of like what I tell people is kind of like the security system for your mental health. Because mental health is just your overall human condition, just how you are. But when you're mentally tough, the mental toughness protects everything else that's going on in your mind, because strength is about, I juxtapose strength and toughness. Strength is about what you're capable of doing. It's like having big muscles. Toughness is about what you actually do. It's about how you show up and do things. Because you can see somebody where I go to the boxing gym, for example, a couple of times a week. You see somebody in there with big muscles can't fight. Right? Muscles don't mean you're tough.
That's right.
And you see somebody with no muscles, they might be the best fighter in there, right? The toughness is about what you actually do and how you deal with the situations in front of you. And that's the third piece of mental toughness. And the fourth one is personal initiative. And personal initiative is all about initiating, starting, making things happen, and having an action bias, going and doing something. Because these other three pieces are all mindsets. They're all ways of thinking. But you can have all the mindset in the world and read all the books, watch all the podcasts, but if you don't do anything, then none of it matters. You got to actually go out there and do something. And you're going to be right. You're going to be an entrepreneur. You got to take action. You can't wait for somebody else to tell you what to do. You're going to be an athlete, especially if you're one coming from a place where nobody knows you. You have to do something to make the attention happen. You can't just sit around and wait for things to happen. You have to go and make things happen. And that's something that whenever I go over, just think about my background and my story, how I got here. It's so many times I had to take initiative. I didn't wait for someone to call me, because if I had waited for someone to call me, I'd just be sitting there by myself. Right? Nothing would have happened. I'd turn into a skeleton. So I had to go and create these opportunities. And the word initiative is initiate. And initiate means to begin something, means to start something. So when you sign a contract and they say, put your initials, what does it mean? It means the first letter. What goes first? So the person who initiates goes first. They're the leader, and everybody else follows them. So those are the four foundational pieces of work on your game.
So thank you for that. It's very, very clear and understandable. And you're right. As you were talking about the first three, that they very much are, they are mindsets.
Mhm.
That last aspect is something that I sort of spent some time on, because it's about taking that first step and taking that action. Again, you can have the books and the podcasts, go to the seminars, listen to speakers, get the coaches. You can do all of those things, but if you're not taking action, then you might as well not have done those things, because you're not doing anything with them. Um,
Right.
because I really, that's the end goal. The end goal is to take this and do something with it. And if that's not going to happen, then go play basketball. I mean, that's really, or do something else. Um, the and I would say, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. But for many people, that last action thing is probably the toughest one of them all, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Because it requires you putting yourself on the line, because now you
Mm,
have to go actually do something. Sometimes people are not sure where to begin and what to do. And we can fix that with just having a clear strategy, a plan of action. And also, once you start to take action, now you're in. All right, you're in it now. Yeah, you jumped in the water. All right, so now you're not
yeah,
standing on the edge of the pool, just dipping your
right.
fingers and your toes in. You're in it now. And that taking action piece is really hard for a lot of people, again, for the reason that maybe they're not sure exactly what to do. They're not sure it's going to work out. And a lot of times what happens is people are looking for confidence where there isn't any. And this is something I was just having a conversation with someone this morning about this, is that when you're doing something that you've never done before, confidence is not what you need to look for. You actually need courage, because confidence is your belief in your ability to do something. And that belief is
Right.
sourced from the fact that you've done it already. And what happens with a lot of people is when they're about to do something new, and I work as a coach, so trust me, I'm talking to people all the
Yep.
time who are about to do
Yep.
something new, and they're getting cold feet. And I had to explain this to them. Like they say, well, I'm not confident about my ability to make this work. Well, I said, of course you're not. You shouldn't be. You don't have any reason to be confident. You need courage. Courage is what it takes to step into a space that you've never been in before and do it anyway.
Correct.
That's
Correct.
what courage is about. And to take initiative, you have to have some courage. And that's why the mental toughness matters. That's why the discipline matters. Is why
Yes.
confidence matters as well, oddly, because you can borrow confidence from another aspect of yourself
Sure.
for a new thing. So my confidence as an athlete linked to the confidence that I use outside of the sports world, because I know I achieved in sports. All right, if I can make it work there, I can make it work over here.
That's
And
right.
even though it's not the same thing, but you can borrow confidence from different aspects of your life. So this is why the discipline, confidence, mental toughness matters when you need to take initiative, especially on something new.
And there's a part about this too, that recognizing that anything that you start new, you're not going to nail it out the gate. Like,
Sure.
you probably are going to have some hiccups, some bumps. You're gonna, you think of bike riding. No one, I mean, I'm sure maybe the people who are that exceptionally gifted and talented jumped on and started riding, but for most people, they fell down, right? And it's to be able to work through that. And I think that's part of where the mental toughness matters, is to keep going in spite of the setbacks, right?
Oh, absolutely. That's what the mental toughness is. Can you keep going even when it's not working? You get knocked down. Are you willing to get back up? Are you willing to come back to the gym the next day? Or you just got hung up on where you make another phone call? You just got a door slammed in your face or you knock on
Right.
another door. And a lot of people, and this is where the persistence comes in and the resilience, a lot of people get told no one time or less than one time and they don't show up again. And that's where the opportunity is the people who keep showing up.
That's right. That's right. So when you made the transition from basketball to this whole other world of mindset and business and becoming an entrepreneur, did
Mhm.
you have any reservations or things that you were worried about or afraid of, or what was happening for you at that time?
I didn't, only because of my background, a couple things in my background. So one is a piece I already told you. I came from a Division III college. So there was no guarantee I was even gonna get a chance to play 1 year of pro basketball, let alone
Right.
almost 10. So I already had my mind on, well, if this basketball thing doesn't happen, what direction am I going to go? I was already
Right.
thinking about that. And there were many times when the phone was not ringing that I had to think about, okay, what if that was the last time the phone was going to ring, was the last one? All right, so maybe this might be starting right now. So I already had my mind on that up front. So my transition into sports was a little bit different than a lot of athletes.
Yep.
And the other thing was something I hadn't mentioned. Back when I was in college, I gotten introduced to, it was an opportunity, said make some extra money on the side in the summertime. And I was a college student playing sports and you don't have any time to make money. So I responded to it. And this guy was doing network marketing, which I didn't build a career in, but I went to a couple meetings and there at the meeting, well, first of all, I got introduced to the whole concept of how entrepreneurship works, which I hadn't been introduced to, even though I have a 4-year business degree. And then the guy was saying, well, get these books. You got to read these personal development books because you can't build a business if you don't build yourself. And I said, that makes perfect sense. So that introduced me to the concept of personal development, which I never heard of. And so that's why I knew I was in that lane once I realized what it was. And then the other thing was, he said, read Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, which I read. And in that book, Kiyosaki was just talking about, well, here's another way that you can make money. You don't have to just go work at a job. You can also acquire or create assets, and the asset can make money for you. So I was always thinking about that. And that's why in 2009, when I read Tim Ferriss and I started creating those products, I said, okay, this product is an asset. So if I could create 2 assets and sell them for $4.99, why not create 10 or 20 or 30 and sell them for even more? So I always been in that mindset of how can I create more assets? So by the time I stopped playing ball, I already had a bunch of stuff going on outside of basketball. So it wasn't very hard for me to transition. Now, I did get into new spaces. Like the first thing I tried to do was, well, not tried to, but first thing I did was professional speaking. And you got to learn the ropes. Like I made a lot of phone calls, a lot of cold calls, a lot of emails. I did a whole lot of free speaking gigs, a whole lot of that in order to try to build up that momentum over time. And then there's a whole new business you had to learn. So I had to really get a business education. So I was doing a lot of it I was just tactical. So I saw Tim Ferriss thing, let me do that. All right, make a product, $5, let me do that. Let me make more products, $5. Let me do that. Let me write a book, let me put this out. And I had an audience. So the stuff was working, but I didn't really have a strategy. There wasn't really a game plan to it.
Right.
And I didn't understand the principles of business. I did not, because I hadn't done that work. So over the last 10 years, since I stopped playing, that's when I've been kind of re-educating myself, or educating myself, period, because it's not like I knew it. I had to learn like the foundations of business. Why does it work? How does it work? And I've always been a big reader, and I credit my parents for that. My mom's an educator, so she had me reading from a very young age. So I've always been a big reader, and I've always had the ability to, once I understand something, always had the ability to explain it. I can articulate it. So to this day, I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, some of whom have been in business longer than me, because I have the ability to absorb the information and I can give it back to you in simplified terms and take complex things and make them simple. So that superpower kind of is really the fuel to my business.
Got you. No, and I can see that being the difference maker. And again, it's talking in the quiet hours where everyone's, they're sleeping, they're not at the gym when you are, you're the one that's sort of putting in that extra work in preparation for the longer term strategy. Because I'll put the longer term vision, which is part of your overall strategy, right? Is getting ready for the, not just when the playing days stop, what comes next. And I'm hearing that loud and clear from you.
Right. Exactly. So I was just thinking about that from the beginning of my career, but also even when it was going, because as an athlete, you got a short shelf life. By 40, you're done. So what's you going to do next?
That's right. You got a whole life after that.
That's right.
For sure. Listen, I think it's fantastic, Dre, the stuff that you've done, certainly what you've done for yourself. And again, finding, your path and really digging in, because I think that is just a real difference maker, right? And being able to find where you're supposed to be and then living it through. The last thing I wanted to ask you about is the importance of momentum. Right. So it's again, I'll use a bike riding analogy, right? You get one revolution and another and another and another. And next thing you know, you've gone around a few times. Next time you ride the bike. Momentum is key. And that's why when we talk about that's why it's getting started is that much more important. So you can build up that momentum.
Absolutely. And I love you bringing these things up that I've been talking about recently. I don't know how. I think we're just on the same wavelength here, Audley. But when it comes to momentum, I mean, once you get it going, you want to keep it going. And momentum is one end of the coin of what they call the law of inertia, or not what they call, but the law of inertia. And object in motion tends to remain in motion until or unless acted upon by an outside force. And the opposite end of that is stagnation, when nothing's happening. And the best bike rider in the world, if you put them stationary on a bicycle and they're not moving, they're going to fall. It don't matter who they are. Lance Armstrong will fall off that bike, but if the bike's moving, a 3-year-old can make it work. So you have to keep moving, and as long as we keep moving and keep our momentum, that's how we can build up more and more power, more and more speed, more and more influence, more of everything, whatever it is that we have. So it's usually when we slow down and stop and allow our momentum to be stopped, that's when we start to get into those moments of being stuck or feeling lost or feeling insecure or doubting ourselves and not doing anything. But as long as we keep moving, And once we get the momentum going and don't do anything to mess it up, usually the good things just keep going. It just goes in a cycle. Again, like you said, like riding a bicycle. Once you learn how to do it, you can't unlearn it.
That's right. And there's nowhere to go but keep going forward at that point, right? And then I also think the mental aspect of what it does is when you start to build up momentum and you say run into an obstacle, because we are going to run into obstacles. They don't ever go away. But when you run into that obstacle, you now can look back and say, but yeah, like I did all this before up to this point and I got through it. What's one more, right?
That's right. And when you have the momentum of having, and this is where I talked about borrowing confidence, when you have the momentum of confidence from one space, you can take a little bit of that and move it into another space, and it can help you get started and help you get moving.
I love it. Dre, this has been awesome, man. I'm telling you, I got so much respect for what you've done for yourself and the way you've taken those experiences and making a difference in the lives of others. For our listeners who wanted to learn more about you or connect with you directly, where can we send them?
I can get people a free copy of one of my books. Can I share that?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Sure. So yeah, this book here, The Third Day. So I mentioned this is one of our discipline principles. Third day is all about how you show up and give your best effort when you least feel like it. And as you can see, the decision that separates the pros from the amateurs. So this is exactly what we talked about here all the way. That's what this book is all about. I give you a free copy of it. All we ask is that you cover the shipping. Just go to thirddaybook.com. The book is free. We'll take care of the shipping. But also, as far as online, you can find me on all the social media platforms, and my profiles are public everywhere. Probably most active on Instagram at Dre Baldwin, but I am on every single platform very actively. And yeah, once you get into either one of those spaces, you're going to find out about everything else we got going on. So I'm very active.
Including YouTube still, I'm imagining?
Oh, yes, absolutely. On YouTube as well. Look my name up. I'm easy to find. I got 10,000 videos up there.
I love it. Dre, listen, man, thanks. This has been a great chat, informative, insightful. And I appreciate you taking the time again, my friend. Thank you.
I appreciate you sharing your platform, Ollie. Thank you.
Back, we are here on the podcast, and again, thanks to Dre for being here. In our chat, certainly when we talk about the key takeaway, it's the power of discipline in shaping our mindset and driving us towards success in all areas of our lives. When we commit to consistently working on our game, both in sports and in life, we unlock our true potential and pave the way for limitless growth and success. Remember, every action, no matter how small, contributes to the bigger picture of our audacious lives. Certainly, you can connect with Dre and learn more insights and guidance on improving your game. I will make sure the contact details are in the show notes below. His book, Working on Your Game, I want to make sure there's a plug for that, and that people are aware that you can connect with him, and he can give you certainly, again, insights on how to get better. He's got a fantastic YouTube channel, like you talked about, and he's really out here to help people. So congratulations, Dre, on the work that you're doing. You're doing a fabulous job. To our listeners, I say thank you for tuning into the Audacious Living Podcast. Don't forget to like, follow, and share this episode. That's what helps us grow and reach even more listeners as we continue to spread inspiration and empowerment to as many people as possible. Certainly stay audacious in your pursuit of greatness. Until next time, stay safe, be kind, show love to one another, and of course, be audacious.
You've been listening to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by Audley Stevenson. If you enjoyed what you heard, be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Until next time, be audacious.